Okay, so today we're going to be replacing left outer tie rod end on a 1994 Ford Ranger. These are some of the things we're going to need. First of all, we're going to need a part. This is the new tie rod end. It's like 18 bucks at AutoZone. You can probably get them online for cheaper. We're going to need grease to grease up that tie rod end. Probably going to need a hammer. Always good to have the Haynes repair manual here. If you don't have one of these for your car, I recommend getting one. Get some nitrile gloves because it's going to be greasy. Got bottle jack. Got to get that tire up off the ground. It's nice to have a work light. I like to wear a pair of safety goggles when I'm underneath the car, keep the dirt out of my eyes. It's going to be useful to have a torque wrench here, breaker bar for getting the lugs off, and here's a half-inch ratchet. We're going to need a number of assorted sockets for that. I don't have all the tools here that you might need for a job like this, but trying to make do with what I have here and see how it goes. Okay, so first we're going to need to crack all these lug nuts before we get this tire up off the ground. And to do that, I'm going to use my breaker bar. So I've got a 3/4 inch deep socket on here. Just going to crack those open just enough to get them spinning. Okay, so now we're underneath the truck here. I'm gonna get this bottle jack under there and get this wheel up off the ground. I also have a jack stand here to keep it jacked up so I'm not working with the truck on the bottle jack itself. You don't need a jack stand. You can use blocks of wood or bricks as long as they are stable and strong, essentially. Just want to get it high enough up there to get this jack stand underneath there. Don't need it to be way up in the air. That's good. And I set it down on the jack stand. I've got a little clearance there so I can get that tire off. Now that we have it up in the air, we can get these lugs all the way off. I got the lugs off. Go ahead and pull that wheel right off. So now that we have the wheel off, we can see the old tie rod end right here. This is the part that we're going to be replacing. And right now you can see there's some play in there and it's knocking around. It's not something we like. We've also got holes in this rubber skirt here which allow the lubricating grease to get out and allow dirt and water to get in when you're driving, which degrades that ball joint. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to take, I don't know if you can see in here, there's a bolt coming up, right, from that tie rod end. There's a nut on top of that bolt right here. And that nut is also held on by this cotter pin, so we're going to take this cotter pin out and then loosen this nut here. Okay, so we're going to take this cotter pin out, get some of this dirt and grease off of here so we can see what we're doing. In this part, you don't have to worry about damaging the cotter pin because you generally want to always replace any cotter pin that you pull out from something like this. And in the kit with the new tie rod in, they've given us another cotter pin. So well, that thing was really in there. Now that we got that out, we can clean this off. We get a little brake cleaner in there and get all this grime off of here so we can get this nut off. And we won't even be reusing this nut because we were provided one with the kit that we got. Looks like it's a 13/16. It's been a pretty long time since it's been changed out, so it's seized on there pretty good. Shouldn't be too bad, but it's nice to use this. There we go, that was pretty easy, just needed the leverage of that breaker bar. Now, should be able to pull that right off. If you don't have a breaker bar, you know, you can improvise. Throw a couple of pieces of pipe on the end of a ratchet, although at that point you do start to risk breaking your ratchet by torquing it too hard and shearing it right off, but I've done it. Okay, got that off. Let's clean this up a little bit. So at this point, a lot of folks will recommend using a Pitman arm puller, which is a device that sits on here and right here and pushes this off. It might be a nice tool to have. I don't have one, so I'm going to use a hammer and just hammer this straight out, because all that's holding this thing in right now is just friction. This part of the tie rod end is just up through here, and we're just going to hammer it straight down out. I'm probably going to lose my camera if I leave it where it was, so I'll just tell you what I'm going to do next. I'm going to hit it from the top here and also hit the side here of this spindle that it's coming through. So I'm going to hit the side here just to try to knock it out, loosen it, and it should just drop. So after just a little knocking there, the tie rod end just drops right down and comes out right here. So now we can go ahead and we're going to loosen these and then unscrew this. So I've got the tie rod end sat back up in here, and I've got that nut just screwed on there a little bit to hold it in there. And it actually turns out that we don't have to loosen this nut back here. We just have to loosen this one right here, because this is the one that the tie rod end is screwed into. So what I did is I went ahead and I put some lubricant on there, and then I used the breaker bar to twist that off. I've got it loose, you can see, but it was just nice. I used the 18-inch breaker bar to put a 15-inch socket on there, and you can see it's pretty loose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this all the way off, because it's just holding that clamp on there. So I can take this all the way off and then drop this out of here, and we should be able to twist this out of that sleeve. Okay, so now we're going to be twisting that tie rod end out. It's important to remember to count the number of full rotations you make, because that's what you're going to, when we replace this tie rod end, we're going to be screwing the new part back in that same number of times. And the other thing about this is you're actually going to be turning in a clockwise direction in order to remove that. So I've been marking down the number of times that I rotate it. It's probably a good idea to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that until it comes out. So I've got that old tie rod end out now. You can see it's out of that sleeve. We're going to go ahead and replace it with this one right here. And we're just going to screw that one in the opposite way of the one that we pulled out. It took me about 28 turns, so I'm going to be turning it 28 times to get it back to where it needs to be. So you can see I've got that tie rod end threaded back in here, just the right number of turns, so that it fits right up into here. And then once we get this nut back on, and once we get that nut tightened down, we can go back ahead and tighten this back down. I put the bolt and nut back in there, but I haven't tightened it down. So once we get this set up good and tightened in and torqued to the right specifications, we can go ahead and do that to this one. So we've got our nut tightened down there pretty well. We're gonna go ahead and put this torque wrench on there, and I got it set to 60 foot-pounds right now. In the chapter, in the Haynes manual here, it says the specifications for torque for this one is between 51 and 73 foot-pounds, so I set it to about 60. And so now we're just going to tighten until we hear this click. Alright, so we've got it at 60 foot-pounds now. So now we can take this off and go ahead and put that cotter pin through the hole in this bolt, through the sides of this nut here, to keep it so this nut doesn't slowly work its way off. Okay, so now we're going to go, after we got this cotter pin installed right here, we're going to go ahead and tighten these adjusting sleeve bolts and tighten these nuts right here to, I've got it set at 40 right now. In the chapter here in the Haynes manual, it says to tighten them to between 30 and 42 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do 40 right here. So we're just going to tighten this until we hear a click. There we go on that one. And that one is tight enough too. So now all that's left to do, since this is all fully installed, is just get the wheel back on, tighten those lugs, and test it out. Okay, I've got those lug nuts back on, torqued to 100 foot-pounds.
Now, the last thing to do is just go take it for a test drive and see how it runs.